Ye Qingshui bowed first when she saw Ye Shi standing before her, then spoke. Pavilion Master, the items sent by His Highness the Crown Prince are quite numerous. They haven't all been inventoried yet. Only part of them has been counted. This is the list of items already inventoried. Please have a look, Pavilion Master. She handed the list to Ye Shi. Ye Shi skimmed the paper once and felt her eyes widen. At the very top were 2 exceptional 50,000-year spirit bones, followed by other valuable items. She turned to Shui Qinghe and asked quietly, Your Highness the Crown Prince, is it really all right to bring these here like this? Shui Qinghe only smiled and patted his chest, a reassuring gesture. If he dared to send these to Frost Snow Pavilion, there was no problem. He could handle any issues that arose. Seeing his look, Ye Shi relaxed and a bright smile crept into her eyes. Frost Snow Pavilion already had spirit bones, and they were of decent age and quality, but no one ever complained about having more. Absorbing more spirit bones would only strengthen their disciples. Aunt Ye, once everything is inventoried, please show me the list again. Ye Shi handed the list back to Ye Qingshui. Yes, Pavilion Master. Ye Qingshui replied readily. Ye Shi cast one last glance at the pavilion's treasury, then left with Shui Qinghe. Walking along the small path behind the hall, Shui Qinghe smiled faintly. How was it? The things you mentioned, they're not just good, Ye Shi said. They're excellent. Shui Qinghe answered lightly. There are still a few spirit bones of higher age and better quality in the imperial family's treasury, but it isn't suitable to bring those over right now. Those words made Ye Shi's eyes sparkle. He meant it wasn't suitable at the moment, but if an opportunity presented itself later, they could be transferred. Catching the meaning, Shui Qinghe gave a confirming nod, and the two exchanged smiles. Time slipped by. The sun sank in the west and the sky darkened. After they discussed a few other matters, Shui Qinghe walked toward the front hall, while Ye Shi accompanied him to the pavilion's entrance. She turned to go back inside when Ye Qingshui came up to her with the inventory in hand. Pavilion Master, this is the fully inventoried list. Please take a look. Ye Shi flipped through the pages and did a quick calculation in her head. When she returned the list, she said, According to my estimate, although these were said to be worth 4 million, the actual total is definitely higher. Thank you for your trouble, Aunt Ye. It's late. You should get some rest. Ye Shi smiled and stepped into Frost Snow Pavilion. You go on, Ye Qingshui said with a bow. I'll head back. That night, after bathing with Zhongmeng's help, Ye Shi lay down on the soft bed, closed her eyes, and slept quickly. The next morning, Ye Shi washed with Zhongmeng's aid and stepped out to find Ling Yuan waiting at the door. Let's go. We're heading to Tiandou Royal Palace, she said, leading Ling Yuan toward the palace. At the gates, they found Shui Qinghe already there, as if waiting for someone. Shui Qinghe, Ye Shi greeted warmly. You go in first. I'm waiting here for the Platinum Bishop of the Spirit Hall, he replied with a gentle smile. Ye Shi was about to enter when she heard steady footsteps approaching. Solace walked up, hands clasped behind his back, his stride measured. Your Highness the Crown Prince. Solace bowed slightly to Shui Qinghe, then glanced at Ye Shi with a cold snort and an expression of barely concealed arrogance. Should I tone it down a bit? If I overdo it, will Second Miss misunderstand? Solace thought, though his face betrayed nothing but disdain. Ye Shi simply snorted back, declining to engage. Shui Qinghe interceded smoothly. Bishop Solace, Pavilion Master Ye, this isn't the place to discuss matters. Please come with me. He motioned for them to follow and led the way into the palace council hall. A long wooden table ran down the center. Emperor Shuiye sat in the main seat at the head of it. Ye Shi and Solace took places at either side, while Shui Qinghe stood quietly behind the emperor. Ling Yuan was about to stand behind Ye Shi when the emperor indicated a nearby seat. Your Excellency Ling Yuan, please sit here, Emperor Shuiye said kindly. Ling Yuan looked to Ye Shi for permission. Since His Majesty has said so, Ling Yuan, please sit, Ye Shi replied softly. Ling Yuan sat down. Your Majesty, for what purpose have you invited me here today? Solace asked with a slight cup of his hands, directing the question toward Emperor Shuiye. Chapter 142, Tit for Tat. Emperor Shuiye's face was solemn. His gaze swept over Ye Shi and Bishop Solace before he spoke slowly. Bishop Solace, I've heard there were some unpleasant incidents between the Frost Snow Pavilion and the Spirit Hall that led to a certain conflict. I invited you here today to resolve that conflict." There was an imperial weight to his voice. Salas's expression, however, hardened at the words, displeasure flashing in his eyes. "Your Majesty, you must have misunderstood. The clash between our spirit hall and the Frost Snow Pavilion wasn't caused by some trivial unpleasantness," he continued. "I have served as a platinum bishop in the Heaven Dew City Spirit Hall for many years. This is the first time anyone has dared to act inside the Spirit Hall and assault me personally. Are we to assume the Frost Snow Pavilion is provoking the Spirit Hall?" Salas cupped his hands toward the Emperor and then fixed a sharp gaze on Ye Shi. "Do you not know why I had someone act against you in the Spirit Hall? If you hadn't sent people to secretly follow me first, how would I have been able to bring Ling Yuan to the Spirit Hall to demand an explanation?" He shot Ye Shi a hard look. "Besides, I never intended to provoke the Spirit Hall. You don't need to use the Spirit Hall to pressure me. Though my Frost Snow Pavilion is no match for the Spirit Hall, it is not afraid of it. If this comes to blows, my Frost Snow Pavilion might lose in the end, but you, Salas, would be the first to die." Ye Shi's voice was steady and her stance unyielding. The two locked eyes and sparred with nothing but cold resolve. Ling Yuan snorted softly, silent but watchful. Salas glanced at her, a trace of caution darkening his face. Shui Qinghe, standing behind the Emperor, admired the performance inwardly. Their acting was superb, each playing their part to perfection. Outwardly, however, he showed no reaction, remaining a quiet presence by the throne. Emperor Shuye rapped the long table before him, the sound drawing everyone's attention. "Bishop Salas, Pavilion Master Ye, if you continue at an impasse, it will harm nobody but yourselves. Give the Heaven Dou royal family some face." Both sides stepped back. Turn major problems into minor ones, and minor ones into none at all. He then addressed Salas directly, calm and authoritative. "Bishop Salas, although Pavilion Master Ye had His Excellency Ling Yuan act inside the Spirit Hall and assault you, you later led people to burn a batch of the Frost Snow Pavilion's supplies. That evens things out. The royal family will compensate the Frost Snow Pavilion for its losses. The Spirit Hall will not bear the cost. Let this matter end here. What do you say?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned to Ye Shi in a softer tone. "Pavilion Master Ye, the same applies to your side. Although Salas led people to destroy some of your valuable supplies, the royal family will cover those losses. The Frost Snow Pavilion will suffer no net loss. So why don't both of you step back and preserve harmony? If you remain at odds, and Bishop Salas reports this to the Supreme Pontiff Palace, the Frost Snow Pavilion may be in trouble. Bishop Salas, you would not be completely unscathed either." Emperor Shuye's gaze swept between them, waiting. Neither Ye Shi nor Salas replied at once. Both fell into silence, weighing their options. The council chamber grew so still one could hear a pin drop. At last, after a long pause, Salas raised his head and looked directly at the Emperor. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "since you say so, the Spirit Hall will give your Majesty face and give the royal family face." Then, turning to Ye Shi, his tone shifted. "I have no other demands, except that she apologize to the Spirit Hall. If a platinum bishop of the Spirit Hall was beaten and there's no apology, that seems unreasonable." Ye Shi met his gaze without flinching. "Your Majesty, the Frost Snow Pavilion is also willing to reconcile, but an apology is out of the question. Instead, Bishop Salas must explain why he sent people to secretly follow me a few days ago." Everything was laid out with a single look: the accusations, the pride, the requirement for an explanation. Emperor Shuye rubbed his forehead, troubled. The situation had not unfolded as he'd expected. Salas's demand for an apology seemed reasonable. After all, Ye Shi had led men into the Spirit Hall and struck the Platinum Bishop. Yet Ye Shi's demand was equally fair. The whole incident began because Salas had sent people to tail her. Both positions were just, and neither side showed any willingness to back down. Once more the confrontational game began. Salas, backed by the Spirit Hall, felt entitled to pressure others. Ye Shi, protected by a titled Douluo, was resolute and uncompromising. Xueqing watched their duel with admiration. If he hadn't known the truth, he would have been completely fooled. Their acting was that convincing. At that moment, a guard spoke from the council hall entrance. Your Majesty, Schoolmaster Ning of the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School has come to visit. Chapter 143, Ning Fengji's Appearance. When the guard announced the visitor, the voices in the deliberation hall fell silent. Emperor Sheye frowned slightly and turned his gaze to the entrance. Yeshi Qinghe and Solace looked as well, each showing a different expression. Yeshi's face was calm, as if nothing could ripple it. A brief flash of thought crossed Shui Qinghe's eyes before he regained his composure. Solace's expression grew a touch solemn, though he revealed nothing. Please admit Schoolmaster Ning. The Emperor's voice was measured. The hall doors opened, and Ning Fengji entered with Gu Rong at his side. Your Majesty, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Pavilion Master Ye, Bishop Solace. I hope we didn't interrupt, Ning Fengji said with a gentle smile. After greeting everyone, he took the seat to the right by a subtle nod from Emperor Shuiye. Of course not, Shuiye replied. In fact, Schoolmaster Ning, you've come at just the right time. The Emperor explained what had just occurred. Ning Fengji listened quietly, his gaze moving over Ye Shi and Solace before settling on Solace. Bishop Solace's request is reasonable, Ning said softly. The Spirit Hall in Heaven Do City is its face. If someone struck a bishop inside the Spirit Hall, an explanation is certainly owed. Solace listened and pruned his thoughts carefully. After a moment, he inclined his head in assent without speaking. However, Ning continued, before Pavilion Master Ye offers an apology, Bishop Solace must first provide an explanation. The incident began because people from the Spirit Hall were following Pavilion Master Ye. If they had not been there, none of this would have happened. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. Ning's tone remained mild. Emperor Sheye met Ning's gaze and immediately gave a small nod, taking up the point. Bishop Solace, Schoolmaster Ning's suggestion is sensible. Is there perhaps a misunderstanding between us? Solace hesitated. Ye Shi, seated opposite him, rested her hand on the armrest and tapped it lightly with a finger, the soft sound almost casual. Her azure eyes blinked subtly several times, sending a quiet message to Solace. Shui Qing's hand came to her shoulder and gave a small shake of warning. Ye Shi drew back with a faint snort, flicked a gesture toward Ling Yuan nearby, and turned her head away. Solace understood the signal. He composed himself and finally spoke. As Schoolmaster Ning said, this was a misunderstanding. Our people were not tailing Pavilion Master Ye on purpose. It was a coincidence that led to the misunderstanding. The specifics cannot be disclosed. There was a dull edge to Solace's words that made it clear they were an evasive explanation, but neither Ning nor the Emperor pressed him further. Ye Shi rose as if to protest, but Shui Qinghe's hand on her shoulder held her in check. Ling Yuan stood and offered an apology on Ye Shi's behalf. Her tone and posture betrayed little sincerity. Emperor Shuiye cleared his throat and addressed Solace. Bishop Solace, Pavilion Master Ye has offered her apology, and you have given your explanation. Shall we let the matter rest here? Solace's eyes shifted, then he inclined his head. Let it be ended here. From now on, Emperor Shuiye continued, the Spirit Hall and Frost Snow Pavilion will each attend to their own affairs. Solace rose, but his manner was curt. He bowed to the Emperor. Your Majesty, with this resolved, I will return to the Spirit Hall. Without waiting for a response, he strode from the hall. As he passed Ye Shi and Ning Fengji, he snorted coldly. Whether at one of them or both was unclear. Ning Fengji smiled politely. Ye Shi gave no visible reaction. When Solace had left, Emperor Shuiye addressed Ye Shi with a more serious tone. Xiao Shi, what Bishop Solace said just now was clearly an excuse. But the Spirit Hall is influential. Letting Solace step down gracefully was wise. Although this is settled on the surface, given his nature, he may well cause small troubles behind the scenes. Ye Shi composed herself and bowed her head. Thank you for the warning, Your Majesty. I will be more vigilant in secret. The Emperor smiled in approval. Schoolmaster Ning, was there something else you wished to discuss at the palace? Shuiye turned his attention back to Ning Fengji. Ning hesitated, then met Ye Shi's eyes. A hint of apology flickered there, his meaning plain without words. Chapter 144, Ning Fengji Takes Action. Ye Shi rose from her seat and bowed to Emperor Shuiye, who sat at the head of the hall. Your Majesty, since you have matters to discuss, I will return to Frost Snow Pavilion. As she spoke, she stole a glance at Ning Fengji. She didn't know why he was intent on getting her sent away, but as long as Shui Qinghe remained, she would still overhear whatever was discussed. Just as Yeshi was about to leave with Ling Yuan, Emperor Shuiye's voice came from the throne. Qinghe, go see Xiaoxi off. He turned his head toward Shui Qinghe, who stood behind him. Yeshi, already preparing to leave, and Shui Qinghe both felt their hearts drop. Ning Fengji's demeanor revealed he was scheming something. If both of them left the room, they would be at a disadvantage without knowing his aim. Shui Qinghe hesitated, then noticed the slight movement of Emperor Shuiye's lips. No sound came, but the crown prince could read the expression, "The early bird catches the worm." That was the message. "Imperial father, then I will go see Xiaoxi off." Shui Qinghe stepped from behind the emperor and walked straight toward Yeshi. "Thank you, Your Highness the Crown Prince." After Yeshi expressed her thanks, she left the council hall with Shui Qinghe, Ling Yuan trailing half a pace behind. No one spoke as they walked out of the palace and onto the busy street. Once outside, Yeshi looked at Shui Qinghe, confusion in her eyes. Shui Qinghe understood the question without a word. "When you couldn't see," Emperor Shuiye mouthed, "the early bird catches the worm," he said. "If I had insisted on staying, Ning Fengji might have noticed. It's better to come out with you." He spread his hands in a helpless gesture. "I don't know what Ning Fengji intends to discuss with the emperor. If neither of us were present, things could go in an unexpected direction." Yeshi considered that, her gaze distant. "Let's make a few more preparations," she said quietly. "Let's see what Ning Fengji is really up to." They walked toward Frost Snow Pavilion without pausing. Ling Yuan, close behind, was thinking aloud. "Young miss, you became the crown princess of the Heaven Dew royal family, which drove the seven-treasure glazed tile school out of royal favor," she said. "Could Ning Fengji try to reverse things the same way, through marriage alliances? Marriage is a common method for noble houses and major sects to stabilize relations." Yeshi and Shui Qinghe's steps faltered. Yeshi blinked at Ling Yuan. "Are you talking about Ning Rongrong?" she asked, already mentally weighing the likelihood. Ling Yuan nodded. Yeshi shook her head gently. "That shouldn't be his plan. Although Ning Rongrong is talented, because of the limitations of the seven-treasure glazed tile pagoda spirit, barring something extraordinary, the highest she can reach is a spirit saint at level 79. Emperor Shuiye wouldn't ask Shui Qinghe to abandon me in favor of Ning Rongrong." Yeshi spoke with quiet confidence. In raw talent, she felt she could outmatch not just Ning Rongrong, but even the combined abilities of the current Shrek 7 devils. With their lost immortal herbs, the only one with a real chance at becoming a god was Oscar. Tang San's path to godhood was essentially closed. Yeshi herself was the candidate for the Asura god's legacy, and Tian Yao was the candidate for the sea god's legacy. Setting talent aside, Yeshi also considered herself among the most notable in appearance. Ling Yuan pressed on cautiously. "Young miss, there's another possibility. The emperor doesn't have to choose between you and Ning Rongrong. As crown prince, Shui Qinghe will be the future emperor of the Heaven Dou Empire. Historically, it is common for a powerful ruler to have multiple consorts, 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, so to speak." Her words hung in the air. Yeshi and Shui Qinghe exchanged a glance and fell silent for a long moment. Then Yeshi let out a soft exclamation. "Oh, I forgot. In this world, capable men can indeed maintain multiple wives and concubines. As the crown prince, that would be considered normal." Shui Qinghe, whose inner thoughts, or rather Qianrei's, mirrored Yeshi's. As a girl, she had simply never contemplated such arrangements, so it had not occurred to her either. "What Ling Yuan said is possible," Shui Qinghe admitted after a pause, "but there's no need to worry prematurely. Ultimately, the choice is mine." She waved a hand as if to dismiss the concern, then resumed walking toward Frost Snow Pavilion. "Let's go back." Yeshi nodded and followed. Ling Yuan thought a moment, then fell silent. They returned to Frost Snow Pavilion, and when they entered the main hall, a familiar figure was already seated in the guest chair, Princess Shui Ke. She rose when she saw Yeshi, Shui Qinghe, Ling Yuan, and the others enter, and walked straight over to meet them. "Brother, Xiaoxi, Your Highness Ling Yan, you've returned." Shui Ke stepped up to Yeshi, gently nudging Qinghe aside, and linked her arm with Yeshi's, a faint smile on her face. "Shui Ke, What are you doing at Frost's Snow Pavilion? Shui-Qi couldn't help asking. Ye-Shi glanced down at the arm he had looped through hers and returned an awkward, polite smile. I'm here as a guest. Shui-Qi blinked slowly. I actually meant to visit a few days ago, but Frost Snow Pavilion and Spirit Hall had some trouble, so I stayed away. She glanced at Shui Qinghe. Since your imperial family mediated today, I figured everything's settled. I came to visit. The mediation didn't make things entirely reasonable, Shui Qinghe muttered as he sat, rubbing his temples. Shui-Qi waved him off lightly. That's about what I expected, she then commented. That Solace fellow, he always acts like he's above everyone, doesn't show much respect for our imperial family. The conversation shifted. Shui-Qi tilted her head and smiled at Ye-Shi. Xiao-Shi, now that things are settled, why don't you show me around Frost Snow Pavilion? I promised last time I'd have a proper look. Ye-Shi didn't hesitate. The two rose and made their way toward the back hall. Shui Qinghe started to follow, then Shui-Qi turned and looked at him. Brother, we two girls are just going to have a look around. You don't need to come. She batted her eyelashes. Shui Qinghe sank back into his seat and waved. All right then, go on. Shui-Qi, don't give Xiao-Shi any trouble, he added seriously. I wouldn't dream of it. Shui-Qi promised, and they continued on. As they walked through the quieter corridors, Shui-Qi took in the layout and the atmosphere. Frost Snow Pavilion isn't as grand as the Tiandou Royal Palace, she observed, but it has its own charm. Ye-Shi guided her forward. I'm glad you think so. The back hall is simple, but dignified, Shui-Qi said, nodding. Servants bowed respectfully as they passed, and Shui-Qi noticed something else in their expressions. Beyond the expected deference, there was genuine gratitude. The maids here seem different from the ones at the Imperial Palace, she remarked. They were bought at the Heaven Dew auction house by people I sent, Ye-Shi explained. So yes, they're grateful. She added quietly, but I don't buy just anyone. I won't have those with a servile look in their eyes. They would be meaningless to me. Shui-Qi listened thoughtfully and then let the subject drop. They continued along the path, Ye-Shi answering the occasional question. Eventually, they reached an open training area where Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Tian Yao, and the others usually trained. 3 figures were in the middle of practice. I've met Du Guyan and Ye Lingling before, Shui-Qi said without blinking. The third must be Tian Yao, right? Yes, that's Tian Yao, Ye-Shi replied. Their session will run a while longer. Do you want to watch or go back to the front hall? Ye-Shi asked. Let's watch, Shui-Qi decided after a beat. We can sit in that pavilion. They settled into the pavilion that overlooked the training ground. On the table were a few cold drinks, obviously left for the trainees. Shui-Qi picked one up. It was chilled. What do you like to drink? Ye-Shi asked. I'll have a maid bring you something. Fruit juice will be fine, Shui-Qi said with a soft smile. Ye-Shi signaled a maid, who bowed and stepped away. Soon she returned with a tray holding 2 cups of fruit juice and some of Ye-Shi's favorite fruits. She set it down and withdrew to stand a respectful distance away. They sipped and watched the training. About 40 minutes later, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and Tian Yao finished and walked over. They greeted Ye-Shi first, then turned toward Shui-Qi. Your Highness Princess. Du Guyan and Ye Lingling bowed. Tian Yao echoed the greeting, then sat beside Ye-Shi and helped himself to the fruit. Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Shui-Qi said, casually picking at a piece of fruit. Ever since you left the Tiandou Royal Battle Team, I heard their overall strength dropped a lot. Du Guyan shrugged, taking a long swallow of her drink. There wasn't much to be done. The Tiandou Royal Academy couldn't raise my strength quickly, but Frost Snow Pavilion could. Same, Ye Lingling answered, as succinct as ever, resuming her relaxed composure. They sat there, the conversation light and easy, while the courtyard hummed with the afterglow of training. Shui-Qi smiled and nodded at Ye Lingling's cold demeanor, then turned to Ye-Shi. Xiao-Shi, will Frost Snow Pavilion enter the next Continental Elite Spirit Master Academy tournament? If you do, with your strength, you should place very highly. Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and Tian Yao all looked expectantly at Ye-Shi. Ye-Shi met their gazes and couldn't help smiling. We will participate. I'm not particularly interested myself, but Tian Yao, Yan Yan, and Lingling certainly are. Her voice was casual, a hint of amusement brightening her sapphire blue eyes. Tian Yao and Du Guyan's faces lit up, and even the usually aloof Ye Lingling showed a rare warmth. I feel like the champion slot is already reserved for Frost Snow Pavilion. With Xiaoxi's strength, 1 against 7 wouldn't be a problem. Duguyan toyed with her emerald green nails, confident. The others nodded in agreement. They'd sparred with Yeshi enough to know how formidable she was. To them, she simply had no equal. Yeshi ate her fruit leisurely, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Shuike watched her with adoring eyes. Rumors of Yeshi's power had already spread through Heavendo City. Footsteps approached. Everyone looked up as Shui Qinghe walked over and stopped at the pavilion's edge. Shuike, it's late. We should return to the Tiando Royal Palace. He focused on Shuike inside. She glanced at the time, then slipped her arm through Yeshi's, eyes fluttering as if weighing something. Seeing her linked with Yeshi and not getting up, Shui Qinghe was about to speak when Shuike beat him to it. Brother, you can go back to the palace by yourself, she said. I want to stay overnight at the Frost Snow Pavilion. She turned to Yeshi and gently shook her arm. Xiaoxi, may I stay here tonight? Yeshi smiled and nodded. Of course. If you want, I'll have someone prepare a room, she added casually. Shuike beamed, holding Yeshi's arm. Xiaoxi agreed. You go back, brother. I'm staying here tonight. Shui Qinghe sighed, then fixed Yeshi with a straightforward look. Xiaoxi, I'll leave Shuike in your care. Don't let her cause trouble. I won't. Shuike pouted but waved him off. With a reluctant shake of his head, Shui Qinghe bowed to Yeshi and turned back toward the Tiando Royal Palace. Once he left, Yeshi rose and patted Shuike's hand. Let's pick a room. I'll have someone clean it. Okay. Shuike linked arms with Yeshi and they walked out together. Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling rose as well and headed to their own rooms. At the Tiando Royal Palace, Shui Qinghe went straight to the meeting hall. The guards parted for him at the doorway. Inside, the hall was quiet. Emperor Shuiye sat on the main seat, brows slightly knotted in thought. Ning Fengji and Gu Rong sat calmly, sipping tea. Father Emperor, I have returned from the Frost Snow Pavilion, Shui Qinghe reported, bowing. How is Xiaoxi? Emperor Shuiye asked. All is well at Frost Snow Pavilion. My younger sister visited as well. She'll be staying overnight, Shui Qinghe replied. Shuike went to the pavilion. Surprise flickered across the emperor's face, but he waved it away. If she wants to stay, let her. It's good for her to have contact with Xiaoxi. A smile eased his features. They get along well, father. No need to worry, Xingye said, lingering behind the emperor and casting a quick look at Ning Fengji in the guest seat. Your Majesty, it's late and there are matters at the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School that need attending. We'll return there first. Ning Fengji smiled and rose. Schoolmaster Ning will take his leave. After Ning Fengji and Gu Rong left, the emperor's brow furrowed again, deep in thought. Shui Qinghe couldn't help asking, Father, what did Schoolmaster Ning want to discuss to make you so troubled? It wasn't anything major, Emperor Shuiye answered slowly. He inquired about you and Xiaoxi. I can't understand why he would suddenly ask about you both, and why he would deliberately move to have Xiaoxi sent away. He gestured for Shui Qinghe to sit beside him. Chapter 147, Ning Fengji's Plan. When Shui Qinghe heard that, he frowned as well. A nagging feeling told him Ning Fengji's question had a purpose. Something was about to happen, but for the moment he couldn't figure out what. The council chamber fell silent. Emperor Shuiye and Shui Qinghe both frowned in thought. No one spoke first. After a long while, Emperor Shuiye, unable to make sense of it, gave up trying. He reached out and patted Shui Qinghe's shoulder. Qinghe, he said lightly, if you can't figure it out, then stop worrying about it. It's late. Go back and rest. He rose from his seat, smiled gently at Shui Qinghe, and walked toward his rooms. Watching him go, Shui Qinghe stood as well, left the council hall, and headed for his own palace. Meanwhile, on the road back to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, Ning Fengji walked ahead with his hands clasped behind him. Gu Rong kept half a step behind at his side. Uncle Bone, Ning Fengji said softly, after we return to the school, go to Soto City and bring Rongrong back. Gu Rong was surprised for an instant, then a smile spread over his face. Fengji, you should have brought Rongrong back long ago, but it's not too late now. His voice was warm, his gaze drifted toward the direction of Soto City. Ning Fengji only smiled and said nothing more. When they reached the school's entrance, Gu Rong watched Ning Fengji step inside, then turned and set off for Soto City. He moved so quickly that, in a few blinks, he was gone like a shadow. Ning Fengjie went straight to the main hall. Chen Xin sat there calmly, sipping 7 treasure glazed tile tea. Fengjie, you're back. Where's that old fellow Gu Rong? Chen Xin asked, a hint of puzzlement in his voice. I sent Uncle Bone to Soto City to pick up Rong, Ning Fengjie said, taking his seat on the main bench. Chen Xin put his teacup down and raised an eyebrow. You should have sent me. If you were only going to fetch Rong, it doesn't matter who goes, whether you or Uncle Bone. Ning Fengjie waved a hand dismissively. Chen Xin did not press the point. He picked up his cup again and continued to taste his tea at an easy pace. Still, Chen Xin's mind traced the small differences in the scene. If he had gone, he could tell Rong he had come because he missed her more than Gu Rong did, and vice versa. Ning Fengjie's expression grew serious. After Uncle Bone and Rong return, make a trip to Frost Snow Pavilion. Go to Frost Snow Pavilion? Chen Xin repeated. If you need to speak with Ye Shi, couldn't you send a disciple to invite the pavilion master as a guest? You don't have to go in person. This time I must go myself, Ning Fengjie said firmly. If anyone else goes, I doubt Pavilion Master Ye would give them face. Chen Xin looked at him with genuine surprise. Fengjie, are you sure? Given the history between Rong and Ye Shi, precisely because Rong and Ye Shi don't get along, this requires your presence, Ning Fengjie interrupted. After Rong returns, invite Pavilion Master Ye to a dinner in Rong's name. The dinner should be for the younger generation only. Chen Xin's surprise deepened. You want me to invite Ye Shi to a youth-only dinner hosted in Rong's name? With their relations, that could be volatile. Ning Fengjie's face was solemn. It's exactly because of that. Some time ago, you guided Ye Shi's sword art. She owes you face for that. She will accept an invitation from you. Chen Xin considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well. After Rong returns, I'll go to Frost Snow Pavilion. With Chen Xin's agreement, Ning Fengjie rose and left the hall. Chen Xin stood as well and followed him out. On the other side, in the back hall of Frost Snow Pavilion, Shui Ke looked around the simple, clean room and smiled. Our pavilion can't compare to the Imperial Palace. The rooms are plain. Please don't mind. Ye Shi patted Shui Ke's arm in a soft voice. Xiaoxi, how could I mind? I'm just happy to be here. Shui Ke waved a hand and sat on the bed to test its comfort. Though the rooms lacked imperial grandeur, their antique charm gave an elegant, refined impression. She settled onto the large, soft bed and smiled faintly. If you need anything tonight, tell the maids or come find me, Ye Shi said. My room is the far left. Ling Yuan stays in the room next to mine. If you need anything, go to her as well. Understood, Shui Ke replied, nodding politely. Ye Shi smiled and with that, left Shui Ke's room and headed to her own, leaving the visitor to grow accustomed to the calm of the Frost Snow Pavilion. Chapter 148, First Meeting with Tang Yuehua. In the antique room, Ye Shi sat on the bed, her gaze fixed on Zhongmeng standing at the doorway. A thoughtful look rested in her pale blue eyes. At once, Zhongmeng stepped forward, bowed, and waited for instructions. Zhongmeng, have a few maids wait outside Princess Shuiqi's door, Ye Shi said softly, her expression serious. If she needs anything, do what you can to help. Yes, young miss, Zhongmeng replied respectfully. I will make the arrangements immediately. After Zhongmeng left the room, Ye Shi sat cross-legged and closed her eyes, slipping into a meditation to cultivate. Time unspooled quietly. The night passed, and by the next morning it was already dawn. Outside Ye Shi's room, Zhongmeng resumed her post. When Shui Qinghe approached, Zhongmeng bowed and stepped forward to block his path. Your Highness the Crown Prince, young miss is still resting. Shui Qinghe halted and glanced at Ye Shi's door. Where is Shui Ke's room? He asked. The third room on the right, Your Highness, Zhongmeng answered, pointing politely. Shui Qinghe nodded and was about to walk on when the door to Ye Shi's room opened. Ye Shi emerged, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Shui Qinghe, why are you here so early? She asked. I came to remind Shui Ke she has class at Moon Pavilion today, he said. I was afraid she'd forget. Then let's go together, Ye Shi replied, stretching and falling into step with him. They arrived at Shui Ke's door, where 2 maids stood guard. At the sight of the Crown Prince and Ye Shi, they bowed. Has Princess Shui Ke woken? Still sleeping, Your Highness, one of them answered. Shui Qinghe gave a small wave to wake her, but the maids looked instead to Yeshi and waited for her cue. Only when Yeshi inclined her head did they enter and rouse the princess. "You see, the maids of Frost Snow Pavilion are very loyal to you," Shui Qinghe said with a faint smile as Shui Ke appeared, hair mussed and eyes heavy with sleep. "Brother, why are you here so early?" Shui Ke yawned. "You have class at Moon Pavilion," Shui Qinghe reminded her. "There's still an hour." Shui Ke stretched, tapping her stomach as if to suggest breakfast first. She looked at Yeshi expectantly. Yeshi motioned with an inviting hand. "You two are welcome to have breakfast at my Frost Snow Pavilion before going." Shui Ke flashed a bright smile and took Yeshi's arm. "You don't have to be so formal," she chirped to Yeshi and signaled Shuanghe to follow. He smiled and fell in behind them. In the dining room, a generous breakfast was already laid out. The three of them ate comfortably, chatting in light tones. After breakfast, Yeshi called for Ling Yuan, and they set out for Moon Pavilion. Perhaps because Yeshi accompanied her, Shui Ke rode in an unusually cheerful mood. Moon Pavilion stood solemn and refined at the entrance. They hadn't been there long before a woman in a silver palace gown glided from within. She appeared to be in her late 20s, but there was a depth to her eyes that suggested an older, keener awareness. "Your Highness the Crown Prince?" "Your Highness the Princess." "Pavilion Master Ye." They bowed politely. The woman returned their salutations with a measured grace. Xuanju, Shuiqing, and Shui Ke responded in unison. Yeshi remained silent, watching her closely. Shuiqing and Shui Ke had already told Yeshi who she was. Tang Yuehua, the Xuanju of Moon Pavilion. Tang Yuehua's gaze flicked over Yeshi as well. There was something in Yeshi's pale blue eyes that made her pause, an impression of someone who saw a little too clearly. Both of them felt the same slight unease. Rumors understated her, Tang Yuehua thought. This girl is not simple. She stepped forward with a graceful gesture and invited Shui Ke to follow her inside. "Xiaoxi, I'll come by Frost Snow Pavilion after class," Shui Ke called over her shoulder as she went in. Only when Tang Yuehua had disappeared into Moon Pavilion did Yeshi withdraw her attention and follow Shui Qinghe back toward Frost Snow Pavilion. On the way, Shui Qinghe began to tell Yeshi about the conversation between Ning Fengji and Emperor Shui Ye, his voice even as he recounted the matters at court. Chapter 149, Invitation from the Dust Heart. Listening to Shui Qinghe's account, Yeshi's expression grew thoughtful. She shook her head lightly. "I don't know what Ning Fengji is planning either. For now, we should move steadily," Shui Qinghe said as they walked toward Frost Snow Pavilion. "Adapt to whatever changes there are by keeping to our course. That will be enough." Yeshi nodded. "Yes, as long as we don't waver, we'll be fine." They reached the entrance of Frost Snow Pavilion and were about to go in when Ling Yuan paused and turned to look in another direction. Yeshi and Shui Qinghe followed his gaze and saw Chenxin approaching, not far off. The three exchanged surprised looks. It was odd to see Chenxin here. "Senior Chenxin," Yeshi greeted, bowing slightly. Shui Qinghe cupped his hands in respect. "Pavilion Master Ye, Your Highness the Crown Prince." "Since you're both here, this saves me a trip to the palace," Chenxin said with a kindly smile, stopping a few paces away. Yeshi frowned for a moment, then motioned for him to come inside. They entered the main hall of Frost Snow Pavilion. Yeshi took the main seat. Shui Qinghe and Chenxin sat to her left and right, while Ling Yuan stood quietly behind her. "You've come for something?" Yeshi asked softly. "I've come to deliver an invitation," Chenxin replied. "And to bring some 7 treasure glazed tile tea for Pavilion Master Ye." He produced 2 invitation cards and 2 neatly wrapped portions of tea, handing one of each to Yeshi and the other to Shui Qinghe. They set the tea aside and examined the invitations. Yeshi's brows tightened. A puzzled look crossed her face. "Ning Rongrong is inviting me to a banquet, and it's for the younger generation only," she murmured. "How could that be?" Shui Qinghe added quietly. "Everyone knows the relationship between Pavilion Ye and Ning Rongrong isn't friendly. Why would she invite you?" Yeshi did not voice her suspicions. She set the invitation down and looked at Chenxin. "Senior Chenxin, are you sure this was meant for me? Did you perhaps deliver it to the wrong person?" Chenxin met their gazes and coughed lightly. "Pavilion Master Ye, the invitation was sent by Rongrong herself. She specifically instructed me to ensure it reached your hands." His explanation was casual, plain as if that truly were the whole story. But instead of putting them at ease, it only deepened Yexi's doubts. After a moment, Chen Xin asked, as if conversationally, "Pavilion Master Ye, has your swordsmanship made any notable progress recently?" Yeshi tapped the armrest, a soft rhythm. "I haven't had much time to practice lately. Affairs have kept me busy." "And the banquet?" Chen Xin prompted. "Since it's an invitation in the name of the young miss of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, I should attend," Yeshi said with a faint smile and took the invitation. Chen Xin looked to Shui Qinghe. Shui flipped the invitation once in his hand and replied in a calm voice, "I will attend as well." Chen Xin nodded. "Pavilion Master Ye, Your Highness." He rose. "The invitations are delivered. I have business at the school I must return to." After exchanging formal farewells, Chen Xin left. Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe accompanied him to the doorway, then returned to the main hall and sat. Shui Qinghe's tone was low and measured. "Xiaoxi, something about this doesn't sit right with me." "It's definitely odd," Ye Shi agreed. "It's possible Ning Rongrong could invite you, but given how things stand between you two, it's extremely unlikely. The most probable explanation is that Ning Fengji, using Rongrong's name, sent the invitation through Chen Xin." "So you still plan to go?" Shui Qinghe asked. "Of course," Ye Shi said. Chen Xin mentioned swordsmanship guidance. "At the very least, I should attend to see what's meant by that. Consider this part of being thorough." She let her hand fall back, silver hair spilling over her shoulder as she thought. Although the banquet was designated for the younger generation, the invitation did not forbid escorts. Ling Yuan would be the obvious choice to accompany her. To be absolutely safe, Ye Shi decided she would bring one more person in secret. Shui Qinghe nodded, his own mind already making calculations. Both of them would prepare, carefully, so nothing could go wrong. Silence settled in the hall for a time as they weighed possibilities and contingencies. Finally, Ye Shi's eyes brightened. A small, confident smile curved her lips. "The banquet is in 2 days. That's enough time to prepare." "We'll see exactly what Ning Fengji is up to," Shui Qinghe said, glancing toward the direction of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Chapter 150, Bring Yu Tianheng with you. Ye Shi rose from her seat and walked toward the back hall of Frost Snow Pavilion. "I'll go make some preparations," she said in a clear, melodious voice like an Oriol's song. "Acknowledged," Ye Qinghe replied, standing as well. "I'll return to Tiando Royal Palace to prepare." Ling Yuan followed Ye Shi back into the rear chambers, while Ye Shi went straight to Duguyan's room. She knocked, and the door opened from the inside. Duguyan appeared, surprise flickering across her face. "Xiaoxi, what brings you here?" "You're up early," Duguyan said, then stepped aside at once to let Ye Shi in. "I won't stay long. I came to ask you to find Yu Tianheng. There are some things I need to ask him," Ye Shi said softly. "Find Tianheng?" Duguyan blinked, then nodded without hesitation. "I'll go find him now." "I'll wait for both of you in the back hall," Ye Shi told her. Duguyan paused, turned, and smiled faintly. "I know. I'll bring Tianheng back very soon." She vanished down the corridor. Ye Shi next went to Ye Lingling's room, but just before she knocked, she heard a voice behind her. "Pavilion Master." Ye Shi turned. "Aunt Ye, are you here for Lingling too?" Ye Qingshui approached and shook her head. She reached into her robes and handed Ye Shi an invitation card. "This came from the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School." Ye Shi took the card and studied it. "It's for the 9-heart begonia," she said quietly. Before Ye Qingshui could finish, Ye Shi produced an identical card from her own sleeve. "I have one as well." Ye Qingshui's expression shifted. She recognized the handwriting on the invitation. This one hadn't been sent by Sectmaster Ning Fengji, but by Miss Ning Rongrong herself. Ye Qingshui knew the relationship between Ning Rongrong and her own pavilion master. They were always at odds. She was surprised Ye Shi had been invited too. Ye Shi, sensing the look, waved it away. "I came to fetch Lingling for the banquet. Since she has an invitation as well, we'll go together." She handed the card back. Ye Qingshui knocked on Ye Lingling's door. When it opened, Ye Lingling accepted the invitation with a pleased smile after the situation was explained. Ye Shi then had Ling Yuan go to inform Tian Yao about attending the banquet and took Ye Lingling to a small pavilion in the back hall. Ye Qingshui returned to the front hall to tend to the pavilion's affairs. In the pavilion, Ye Shi and Ye Lingling sat opposite each other, each holding a glass of fruit juice. A quiet hush settled over them. Ye Lingling remained silent by nature. Ye Shi had other thoughts on her mind. Soon, Ling Yuan and Tian Yao appeared. Tian Yao sat beside Ye Shi and quietly nibbled at the fruit. Ling Yuan stood respectfully behind them. They all waited in companionable silence. Meanwhile, at Tiando Royal Academy, Du Guyan leaned against an old tree and watched Yu Tianheng's room. After a few minutes, the door opened and he walked out toward her. Yan Yan, why did you come to the academy to find me? He asked as he came up, a smile brightening his face. Why not? Du Guyan retorted, but when Yu Tianheng mentioned Ye Shi, she looked more serious. Xiao Shi asked me to find you. Do you have time now? She added. Come with me to Frost Snow Pavilion. If you asked me in person, I surely have time, Yu Tianheng answered readily. Let's go. They walked back to Frost Snow Pavilion together. Because Du Guyan was with him, Yu Tianheng's entry was largely unimpeded, almost. Near the back hall, they encountered Du Gubo, who immediately lost his smile when he saw Yu Tianheng at Du Guyan's side. His face hardened and he narrowed his eyes. Yan Yan, why did you bring him to the back hall? Du Gubo asked, his tone cool and pointed. Bringing an outsider into the rear chambers of Frost Snow Pavilion isn't appropriate. Du Guyan stopped but did not hesitate. She looked at him, composed. The matter was not yet settled. Chapter 151. What Yan Yan said makes sense. Listening to Du Gubo, Yu Tianheng's face betrayed no emotion. He shrugged lightly and turned his attention to Du Guyan at his side. Meeting Du Gubo's stare, Du Guyan gave a soft cough. Grandpa, Xiao Shi asked me to bring Tianheng to the back hall, she said. If Xiao Shi wants to speak with Tianheng, then speak with him, Du Gubo replied. He stepped aside to clear the way, but his peripheral vision kept studying Yu Tianheng. Yu Tianheng, however, remained completely unfazed. This was far from the first time he'd been looked over like that. He'd long since grown used to it. Du Guyan led Yu Tianheng toward where Ye Shi was waiting. She offered Du Gubo a faint smile, then guided Yu Tianheng to the pavilion where Ye Shi sat. Yan Yan, you're back, Ye Shi greeted and gestured for Yu Tianheng to take a seat. Du Guyan sat, Ye Shi nodded, and Yu Tianheng glanced around at the others. Tian Yao, Ye Lingling, before sitting down. Pavilion Master Ye, Yan Yan said you wanted to see me. What's this about? He asked quietly. It's nothing major, Ye Shi said, smiling gently. You don't have to call me Pavilion Master Ye, just call me Ye Shi. Have you received an invitation from the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School? Yu Tianheng produced the invitation and waved it before her with a casual tone. You mean this? I have one. Looks like you did too. Ye Shi's sapphire eyes flashed. I did, but I don't intend to go. Our Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan and the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School have a bit of a grudge between them, Yu Tianheng said as he put the invitation back away. I was planning to take Yan Yan to the banquet. Ye Shi set her own invitation on the table and looked at Du Guyan, asking with her eyes if she would go. Du Guyan thought for a moment and readily agreed. Yu Tianheng watched the exchange, then reconsidered the invitation in his hand. The banquet suddenly seemed worth attending. I've thought it over, he said. The 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School's face should be paid. Since you're both going, we might as well go together, Ye Shi responded. Her tone was simple and decisive. She invited Du Guyan along because she wanted Yu Tianheng there, too. If anything happened at the banquet, he could be the first to act. Hearing Ye Shi's answer, Yu Tianheng kept his composure outwardly, but felt pleased inwardly. Ye Shi felt the same. With that settled, conversation in the pavilion turned light and casual. As they chatted, Yu Tianheng found his gaze drifting to Tian Yao, who was quietly eating fruit. A thoughtful look crossed his face. Tian Yao noticed and met his eyes. Yu Tianheng, do you want to spar with me? Tian Yao set her fruit aside and asked seriously. Yu Tianheng raised an eyebrow and shook his head. I don't intend to. I probably couldn't beat you right now. He looked toward Ye Shi, eyes thoughtful. But if possible, I'd like to test Ye Shi's strength. I've always heard how strong she is, but I've never seen it. His words made the pavilion fall silent. Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling all turned to him. Du Guyan, a little exasperated, said, Tianheng, weren't we just talking about going to the banquet? Let's save sparring for another day, and she winked at him. Yu Tianheng remained looking at Ye Shi, waiting. Ye Shi simply said, all right. rose from her seat and walked to the open space outside the pavilion. Yu Tianheng followed. Du Guyan, watching them go, turned to Ye Lingling. Lingling, I'll need your help later, she said with a trace of helplessness. Ye Lingling nodded and said nothing but agreed. Outside, Ye Shi and Yu Tianheng faced each other. Seeing Ye Shi in person stirred something in Yu Tianheng. Years ago, in the Heaven Du Great Spirit Arena, she had been the one he wanted most to challenge. Now he finally had the chance to measure her power, not because he expected to win, but simply to see for himself how far she surpassed him. Ye Shi summoned her 8-winged slaughter angel spirit. After spirit possession, 4 spirit rings appeared beneath her feet, 1 yellow, 2 purple, and 1 black. A slaughterous, powerful aura poured from her, forming a slaughter domain that radiated outward. A slaughter sword materialized in her hand. You may make the first move, she said, spinning the sword once so its tip pointed at Yu Tianheng. Yu Tianheng took in the aura, watched the 4 spirit rings flicker, and felt the slaughter domain spread. He swallowed. The gap between them was clear and vast. I think Yan Yan was right, he said quietly, meeting Ye Shi's steady gaze. Then, with a calmness that hid the respect in his voice, he added, let's talk about sparring and competing another day. Chapter 152, Departure Time. Du Guyan, who had been sitting in the pavilion, rose immediately when she saw Yu Tianheng looking toward Ye Shi. Xiaoxi, since we're all going to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School banquet together, why don't we set a departure time? We can leave Frost Snow Pavilion together. As for sparring and competing, let's save that for another day. Du Guyan's words smoothed things over. Yu Tianheng glanced at Ye Shi and nodded in agreement. Ye Shi didn't reply at once. She looked at Yu Tianheng with a faint half-smile. He returned a polite smile and said nothing. Everyone in Heaven Do City knew of Ye Shi's unusual spirit ring configuration, far beyond others of her rank, but Yu Tianheng had never heard anyone suggest she also possessed an innate domain. Domains were rare across the continent. Even some titled Douluo lacked them. The longsword Ye Shi had held earlier was clearly no ordinary weapon. Yu Tianheng, as a recognized genius of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan, had sharp eyes. Now that he knew what made the sword exceptional, he didn't want to probe further. If he hadn't seen Ye Shi at full power, Yu Tianheng would have been eager to test her strength. But after witnessing her full display, he had no desire to spar. There's a difference between friendly practice and being crushed outright. He suspected that, in a true fight, even if he brought in a cousin from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan for backup, he'd still be overwhelmed by Ye Shi. So, after a moment's thought, he chose not to press the issue. The slaughter domain faded. The slaughter sword slipped from Ye Shi's hand and returned to her spirit sea as she retracted the 8-winged slaughter angel spirit. Then we'll talk about sparring and competing another time, Ye Shi said, withdrawing her gaze from Yu Tianheng and walking toward the pavilion. Yu Tianheng quickly followed, and the two sat down. Ye Shi reached for the glass of juice set before her and sipped it with composed elegance. Yu Tianheng didn't bring up what had just happened, as if nothing had occurred. 2 days from now is the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School banquet. What time will you leave? I'll come to Frost Snow Pavilion to find you, Yu Tianheng asked earnestly. 7 in the evening, Ye Shi replied after a moment. We'll depart Frost Snow Pavilion promptly. All right, I'll be there on time, Yu Tianheng said solemnly. Yan Yan, I have a few things to handle at Tiando Royal Academy. I'll head back first, Yu Tianheng told Du Guyan, though he didn't actually move. Du Guyan understood immediately. I'll go with you to Tiando Royal Academy and have a look, she said, standing and walking out of the pavilion. After a brief farewell to Ye Shi, Yu Tianheng fell into step with her. Once they left, Ye Shi glanced around the pavilion, then waved to the others. Tian Yao, Lingling, you two should go back and prepare. Her voice was clear and pleasant, like a yellow aureole. Tian Yao and Ye Lingling agreed and headed for their rooms. Ye Shi's gaze turned toward the direction of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Her azure eyes narrowed slightly as she drifted into thought. 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. In the grand, solemn hall, Gu Rong led Ning Rongrong inside. As soon as she entered, Ning Rongrong's eyes swept the room. Spotting Chen Xin seated on a chair, she hurried over. Rongrong, you're back, Chen Xin said, rising as she approached. Grandpa Sword, I heard Grandpa Gu say he missed me more than you did, Ningrongrong teased, mischief in her eyes. Chen Xin shot a sideways glance at Gurong and snorted. Rongrong, don't listen to that old bones nonsense. I definitely missed you more. The reason I didn't go to Soto City to pick you up was because I've been preparing a banquet for you, and this banquet is only for the younger generation, Chen Xin said calmly. Before Ningrongrong could answer, Gurong spoke up from the side. You sword man, what nonsense are you talking about? Is preparing a banquet more important than picking up Rongrong? I definitely missed Rongrong more. Gurong stood with his arms crossed, refusing to yield. If I'd known Fengji was bringing Rongrong back, would it have been your turn then? Chen Xin met Gurong's gaze. At that moment, Ning Fengji entered the hall. He smiled and shook his head at the scene, then turned to Ning Rongrong. Rongrong, I've invited someone to the banquet. I hope you'll keep your temper in check while we have guests. Chen Xin and Gurong both looked at Ning Fengji. Chen Xin said nothing. Gurong's expression showed puzzlement as he looked to Chen Xin for an explanation, but Chen Xin only shook his head and remained silent. The smile vanished from Ning Rongrong's face. She already suspected who Ning Fengji had invited. There was only one person among the younger generation in Heavendo City who could prompt such careful instructions from Ning Fengji. Ye Shi, Pavilion Master of Frost Snow Pavilion. Father, you invited Ye Shi? Ning Rongrong's voice carried a sharp edge, and her beautiful eyes narrowed. Anyone could tell she wasn't just unhappy, she was angry. Yes, I had Uncle Jian deliver the invitation in your name. Ning Fengji reached out and smoothed Ning Rongrong's hair, trying to calm her. Did Ye Shi agree to come? Ning Rongrong drew a breath. She agreed. Ning Fengji's answer was short, but his tone was unexpectedly gentle. Ning Rongrong said nothing further. The great hall fell quiet. Gurong watched the exchange between Ning Fengji and Ning Rongrong, and just as he was about to step forward, Chen Xin laid a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. Seeing the warning, Gurong hesitated, then stayed silent, watching. After a moment, Ning Rongrong turned and left the hall. I'm tired. I'll go rest, she said, and walked straight toward her chambers without looking back. When she had gone, Gurong moved to Ning Fengji's side and asked softly, Fengji, you know Rongrong and Ye Shi don't get along. Why invite Ye Shi to the banquet? Isn't this just going to upset Rongrong? Ning Fengji sank into the head seat, his voice calm, his eyes thoughtful. Precisely because I know their relationship is bad, I had Uncle Jian send the invitation in Rongrong's name. Gurong, seeing no more to be gained from pressing the matter, didn't ask again. He headed instead to Ning Rongrong's quarters to try to soothe her. Chen Xin remained in the hall, sipping his 7-treasure glazed tile tea in silence. Ning Fengji's gaze drifted toward the Frost Snow Pavilion, but he remained quiet. 2 days passed in silence. At the Frost Snow Pavilion, in an antique curio room, Ye Shi sat in front of a dressing mirror while the maid Zhongmeng smoothed her silver hair. Miss, would you like to change? Zhongmeng asked as she finished arranging the final strand, eyeing the silver palace gown Ye Shi wore. For the banquet, this may be a little plain. No need, Ye Shi said. It's just a banquet. This set is fine, no need to be extravagant. The gown, though simple at first glance, was elegant. Among ordinary nobles, it was considered quite costly. Ye Shi rose from the chair and stepped from the room. In the outer chamber, she found Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and the others waiting, each dressed more formally for the banquet and looking striking. Are you all ready? Ye Shi asked. We've been ready for some time, Tian Yao said with a soft nod. Let's go, Du Guyan added with a smile. Ye Lingling didn't speak, but she nodded earnestly. Ye Shi snapped her fingers and led the way to the front hall. As they entered, Shui Qinghe, Shui Ke, and Yu Tianheng rose to greet them. Shui Ke came straight up to Ye Shi, appraising her outfit. Yu Tianheng's eyes lit immediately on Du Guyan. Shui Qinghe scanned the group and fixed his attention on Ye Shi. Xiao Shi, shall we go to the 7-treasure glazed tile school? Shui Ke asked. Yes, let's go, Ye Shi replied with a gentle smile. Outside the pavilion, 3 carriages waited. The first belonged to the Frost Snow Pavilion, driven by Ling Yuan. The others were from the Heaven Do royal family and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Ye Shi, Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling climbed into the Frost Snow carriage. Shui Qinghe and Shui Ke took the Heaven Do carriage, and Yu Tianheng entered the Blue Lightning clan's carriage. Only after the carriages departed did a shadow slip from the Frost Snow Pavilion, Ghost Leopard, who kept to the edges and followed them toward the Seven Treasure School. Inside the carriage, Yeshi lifted the curtain and watched the street. A small smile curved her lips. "There are going to be a lot of people at this banquet," she murmured. "Many disciples from the sects affiliated with the Seven Treasure School are heading that way." Her companions seemed unconcerned. The carriages left Heaven Do City and picked up speed, and soon they reached the mountain gate of the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School. Several carriages were already parked there. Many guests had arrived before them. As they stepped down, disciples lining both sides of the gate hurried forward to greet Yeshi and her party. Chapter 154. Is she really that strong? I don't believe it. The disciples of the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School bowed first to Yeshi and the others, then gestured for them to enter. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Your Highness the Princess, Pavilion Master Ye, Miss Tian Yao, Miss Ye Lingling, Young Master Tianheng, please follow me." The disciple's smile was polite, his tone neither obsequious nor arrogant. "Spirit Kite Mianxia, this banquet is for the younger generation. Please come with me. Our sect master has prepared another banquet elsewhere." Another disciple came forward and bowed respectfully to Spirit Kite. After Yeshi nodded once to acknowledge her, Spirit Kite went with the disciple to the other hall. Yeshi, Shui Qinghe, Yu Tianheng, and the rest followed the disciple before them into the banquet room. The hall was laid out with an abundance of food, delicate dishes, exotic desserts, pastries, and drinks. Not many people were present yet. Roughly 20 or so young people from across Heaven Do City had already gathered. At the head table, Ningrongrong's eyes fixed on Yeshi the moment they entered. Yeshi noticed her immediately. Their gazes met like two blades crossing. Neither spoke. After a moment, Ningrongrong snorted coldly and withdrew her stare. Yeshi led Tian Yao, Duguyan, Ye Lingling, and the others to a table. Shui Ke sat nearby, while Shui Qingyi drifted into conversation with other guests. No sooner had Yeshi sat down than a young man in splendid robes approached. "Pavilion Master." He bowed respectfully. There was something vaguely familiar about him. Yeshi studied him for a moment, then waved him up to stand. The young man took the cue and introduced himself. "I am the sect master's son of the Azure Bird sect. Our sect was the first to pledge allegiance to Frost Snow Pavilion." Yeshi nodded. The two began to converse quietly. Nearby, Yu Tianheng was about to step forward when a hand fell on his shoulder. He turned to see Yu Tianxin of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Surprise flitted across his face. "Cousin, what are you doing here?" "I came to join in the fun. Why are you at the banquet?" Yu Tianxin asked, glancing toward Yeshi. "I'm here for the same reason." Yu Tianheng watched as Yu Tianxin took in Yeshi. "Is that Pavilion Master Yeshi?" he asked. "Yes," Yu Tianheng answered. "I've heard she's very strong." Yu Tianxin's interest sharpened. He appraised Yeshi with a calculating look. "Is she really that strong?" Yu Tianheng, who had seen Yeshi's power firsthand, couldn't help but warn him. He pulled Yu Tianxin back a few steps. "Don't even try." "I saw her once," Yu Tianheng said earnestly. "It felt like even if the two of us attacked together, she could beat us both." Every word came from experience. Yu Tianxin still stared at Yeshi, incredulous. "Is she really that strong?" Yu Tianheng merely nodded, grave and certain. "I don't believe it," Yu Tianxin muttered, and then strode toward Yeshi. Yu Tianheng could only watch helplessly as his cousin crossed the hall. Yu Tianxin bowed smoothly to Yeshi and extended a hand. Yu Tianxin of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. "Greetings, Pavilion Master Ye." Yeshi looked him over and took his hand. At first the handshake was polite, but Yu Tianxin gradually increased his grip, testing her strength. Yeshi's brow tightened minutely. Displeasure flashed across her features. Physical strength was one of her assets. After training on the body path, she was stronger than most, including Yu Tianxin. She disliked his probing, patronizing attitude. "Do you want to use spirit power as well?" she asked calmly, and she applied force with her hand. Almost instantly, Yu Tianxin felt a searing pain shoot from his hand up into his head. Yeshi smiled faintly as her grip tightened, though she showed no outward strain. This was far from her limit. A crack sounded. Bone-breaking rang in Yu Tianxin's ears. Only then did he realize Yu Tianheng had not been exaggerating. "Consider this a lesson," Ye Shi said without warmth, and she let go. Yu Tianxin forced a smile and walked back to Yu Tianheng, trying to hide the pain. "Cousin, are you all right?" he asked, presenting his hand. Yu Tianheng looked at the ruined hand. "It's nothing." Yu Tianxin shoved his injured hand behind his back and said in a clipped voice, "Tianheng, you should have stopped me." Yu Tianheng was speechless. He'd tried to stop him, tried his hardest, yet it had been impossible. Chapter 155, Invisible Smoke. "Cousin, your hand." Before Yu Tianheng could finish, Yu Tianxin gave a small shake of the head. "It's nothing, just a minor loss." His voice was casual, his face composed. He stepped away before Yu Tianheng could press further. Yu Tianheng knew the truth well enough. Though the injury wasn't life-threatening, it was no light matter. At least one bone in his hand was broken. Yu Tianxin kept it hidden for the sake of pride. Watching his cousin walk off, Yu Tianheng hesitated a moment, said nothing, and moved over to talk with Du Guyan. Everyone in the banquet hall was roughly the same age, so conversation flowed easily. Voices filled the room, lively and continuous. Soon the banquet was ready to begin. The doors opened, and a troop of maidservants carried in tableware, arranging everything with precise care. Seating was set with Ning Rongrong in the central place of honor. Positions were assigned by status, the higher-ranked seated nearer to her. To Ning Rongrong's left sat Crown Prince Shui Qinghe, Princess Shui Ke, Yu Tianheng, Yu Tianxin, and others. To her right were Ye Shi, Tian Yao, Ye Lingling, Du Guyan, and the rest. When everyone was seated, soft zither music soaked the hall, and dancers moved gracefully in the center. Ye Shi watched the performance for a few moments, then let her gaze drift back to the food on her plate and tasted the delicacies slowly. Not long after the banquet began, Ning Rongrong picked up the 2 cups in front of her and rose. She walked to Shui Qinghe. "Your Highness, this is 7 treasure glazed tile tea, our school's specialty." She handed 1 cup to Shui Qinghe. As the honored guest, Ning Rongrong drew everyone's attention. When she moved, everyone looked. Ye Shi calmly poured 2 cups, stood, and walked to Shui Qinghe's side as well. "Shui Qinghe, this drink's very good. Would you care to try some?" Her voice was soft, and her smile placid. Shui Qinghe glanced first at the 7 treasure glazed tile tea from Ning Rongrong, then at the cup Ye Shi offered. A flicker of thought crossed his face. He didn't answer, didn't take either cup right away. The assembled guests watched, intrigued. Everyone knew the 7 treasure glazed tile school and the Heavendu royal family were closely allied. The Crown Prince's ties to the Frost Snow Pavilion were unusually close, so it was a small drama to see which cup he would accept first. "I don't like the feel of this," Yu Tianheng muttered. "Don't worry," Yu Tianxin said in a detached tone. "It's almost impossible for them to come to blows. Even if they did, the outcome is already decided." Given the strength Ye Shi had already demonstrated, Yu Tianxin figured Ning Rongrong, who was more of a support figure, wouldn't make an aggressive move. And if a fight did break out, he thought, Ye Shi could probably dispatch an enhanced retinue of Ning Rongrong's followers without much trouble. The only question would be how long it would take. He read the situation as clearly as if it were laid out before him. Ning Rongrong glared at Ye Shi. Her displeasure deepened, but she forced herself to breathe evenly and said nothing, turning her attention back to Shui Qinghe. Ye Shi, unfazed, met Ning Rongrong's gaze coolly. In the eyes of Emperor Shui Ye, her relationship with the Crown Prince was close, and doing nothing could be risky if the matter reached the Emperor. Under the watching eyes of everyone present, Shui Qinghe smiled lightly. He first took the cup Ye Shi offered and put both cups down on the table, then accepted the 7 treasure glazed tile tea from Ning Rongrong. "Xiao Shi Rongrong, I'll taste them both." His voice was soft as spring rain. Ning Rongrong's face clouded when Shui Qinghe took Ye Shi's cup first, but she remembered her father's instructions and held back. Ye Shi allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, gave Shui Qinghe a slight nod, and returned to her seat. Strictly speaking, Ye Shi's current standing matched Ning Fengji's, and was actually above Ning Rongrong's. Even if Ning Rongrong might inherit leadership of the 7 treasure glazed tile schools someday, that was a future matter. For now, she did not represent the sect. That logic steeled Ning Rongrong against making a scene, but it did not stop the rising displeasure inside her. She fixed her eyes on Ye Shi. Ye Shi rested an elbow on the arm of her chair, chin on her hand, her azure eyes unyielding. The two women held each other's gaze without either breaking. Tension, invisible and sharp, filled the air, so palpable some could almost smell the sparks. No one spoke. The zither music threaded through the moment, the dancers in the center stealing curious looks. Seeing the standoff, Shui Qinghe turned and met Shui Kei's eyes, inclining his head slightly, an unspoken request for her to step forward and smooth things over between Ye Shi and Ning Rongrong. Chapter 156. Shui Kei smooths things over. Princess Shui Kei, who had been watching the scene with obvious enjoyment, caught Shui Qinghe's eye and then glanced between the silent Ning Rongrong and the composed Ye Shi. She decided to intervene, and to start with Ye Shi. To Shui Kei, Ye Shi always seemed easier to handle than Ning Rongrong. She rose from her seat and walked over. At Ye Shi's side, she linked arms and leaned close enough to whisper into her ear. "Xiao Shi, why are you behaving like young Miss Ning? Everyone in the Heaven Du royal family knows about your relationship with my brother," she added, lowering her voice. "And what is your status? You're the pavilion master of Frost Snow Pavilion, equal in rank to her father. Losing your temper here will make you look petty. This is a banquet hosted by the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Give the host some face." Her words were soft, meant only for Ye Shi. The warmth of the whisper tickled Ye Shi's ear. Her cheeks colored slightly. "Princess Shui Kei, you saw it yourself. It's not me refusing to be courteous to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. It's Ning Rongrong who takes offense when she sees me," Ye Shi murmured back. Princess Shui Kei kept her tone low and casual. "Regardless, this is the host's territory. It's reasonable to show the host some courtesy." She cast a discreet glance at Ning Rongrong. Ye Shi said nothing more. She gave a slight nod and was the first to look away, breaking eye contact with Ning Rongrong. The tension in the banquet hall visibly eased as soon as Ye Shi looked away. Ning Rongrong, noticing that Ye Shi had averted her gaze, turned her attention to Princess Shui Kei, curious now about what had been whispered. As the host's young miss, Ning Rongrong also understood that Princess Shui Kei was playing peacemaker. Under Ning Rongrong's stare, Shui Kei rose and walked over to her. "Rongrong," she said quietly, moving in close. "Xiao Shi was invited by you to this banquet. As the hostess, how can you get angry with a guest? Look at everyone's expressions. It's just about handing over a cup, really not worth a scene. Give the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School some face, and both of you take a step back." Ning Rongrong kept stealing glances at Ye Shi as Shui Kei spoke. "You saw it yourself," Shui Kei went on softly. "She has to meddle in everything. I was only offering a cup of tea to His Highness the Crown Prince, and she had to interfere. Given the circumstances between Xiao Shi and my brother, it's understandable she reacted." Ning Rongrong snorted once, turning away from Ye Shi. "What did you just say to Ye Shi?" she demanded in a low voice. Shui Kei blinked innocently. "I spoke up for you," she said with mock seriousness. "This is the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. How could a guest insult the host? That would be disrespectful to the school." Ning Rongrong's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Even though she and Ye Shi were at odds, Ning Rongrong still had a clear sense of Ye Shi's standing. Even Emperor Xueye treated Ye Shi with deference. She found it hard to believe Shui Kei's explanation, but Shui Kei only nodded solemnly and said no more. After a moment, satisfied that Shui Kei wouldn't elaborate, Ning Rongrong turned and walked toward the main seats. Shui Kei watched her go, then glanced at Shui Qinghe, then back at Ye Shi, before returning to Ye Shi's side. "Why are you still here?" Shui Kei asked softly. "Aren't you going back to your brother?" Ye Shi smiled faintly. "Between my brother and you, I'd rather stay with you, Xiao Shi." Shui Kei's face lit up with mirth. "Then stay here with me." Ye Shi answered coolly and resumed tasting the delicacies before her. With that little incident smoothed over, the banquet went on, though the guests continued to cast occasional curious glances at Ye Shi and Ning Rongrong. On the other side of the compound, in a grand reception room, Schoolmaster Ning Fengji sat in the main seat, smiling gently. Chen Xin and Gu Rong flanked him. Below them, Ling Yuan and a few elders occupied the remaining seats. The mood here was noticeably brighter than in the main banquet hall. Most people chatted and laughed freely. The only exception was Ling Yuan, who remained unusually quiet. Elder Ling Yuan, Ning Fengji said with easy courtesy, are the dishes not to your taste? Have we been remiss as hosts in any way? You are too polite, Schoolmaster Ning, Ling Yuan replied, her tone composed but measured. I am merely concerned about the situation in the banquet hall. After all, the relationship between my pavilion master and young Miss Ning has been strained. Ning Fengji waved a hand as if to reassure her, though his eyes kept flicking toward the banquet hall. I have arranged for people outside to monitor things, Ling Yuan continued calmly. If anything happens, they will report it immediately. Since you've made those arrangements, I can rest easy, Ning Fengji said. His gaze remained fixed in the direction of the banquet, however. Ling Yuan's calm, she alone knew, stemmed not from Ning Fengji's precautions, but from Ghost Leopard, always lurking in the shadows, charged with watching over Yexi's safety. Chapter 157, Give Me Some Face. Ning Fengji lowered his gaze, lifted the 7 treasure glazed tile teacup in his hand, and took a light sip. Ling Yuan closed her eyes and rested, refusing to engage in conversation. No one in the room was rude enough to disturb her. Ning Fengji toyed with his teacup, his eyes drifting toward Ling Yuan below, but he said nothing, either lost in thought or waiting for the right moment. As a peak Douluo at level 96, Ling Yuan had long since noticed his look, but because Ning Fengji remained silent, Yexi did as well. Time passed. The door opened, and a disciple from the 7 treasure glazed tile school hurried in, went straight to Ning Fengji, and whispered in his ear. Ning set his cup down, rose, scanned everyone in the room with an apologetic smile, and said, Everyone, I have to attend to some matters. Please excuse me for a moment. Voices rose in chorus. Master Ning, go ahead. Your duties come first. Master Ning, we understand how busy you are. Ling Yuan opened her eyes at once and looked toward the banquet hall. Master Ning, did something happen in the banquet hall? She asked, staring at the doors rather than at Ning Fengji. Ning only offered a regretful look and stayed silent. She was about to stand when Chen Qin's voice sounded quietly in her ear. Your Highness Ling Yuan, rest assured, nothing has happened in the banquet hall. This is an internal matter for our school. Gu Rong turned his gaze to Ling Yuan but said nothing. Ling Yuan pulled back her mental senses and probed toward the banquet hall. Finding no major disturbance, she felt a little relieved. She wasn't alone with Yexi this time. A ghost leopard was hiding nearby, so things should be safe. She inclined her head slightly to Ning Fengji and closed her eyes to resume resting. Ning Fengji followed the disciple out. Walking along the flagstones, he asked softly, So who acted, Yexi or His Highness the Crown Prince? The disciple shook his head. It wasn't Yexi or His Highness, it was Yu Tianheng of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon family. Ning Fengji's brows tightened. He had suspected Yexi might have caused trouble. After all, she didn't get along with his daughter, and he'd even considered Shui Qinghe stepping in. But Yu Tianheng? That was unexpected. He said nothing further. He would see for himself once they reached the banquet hall. In the banquet hall, Ning Rongrong stepped between Yu Tianheng and the others, her gaze fixed on him. Yu Tianheng, she said, restraining herself, they're from my 7 treasure glazed tile school. What happened just now was an accident. Please have mercy. Yu Tianheng's expression darkened as he looked over at Yexi and her companions. Yexi was wiping a few damp spots from her clothes. Duguyan stood with her hem more soaked than anyone's, water still dripping from it. Princess Shuike had some dampness, but far less than Duguyan. Yexi had the least. Every splash had landed in a painfully precise pattern. Anger flared in Duguyan's eyes. Princess Shuike's face clouded. Rongrong, Duguyan said hotly. I want an explanation. How could that be an accident? If I and Princess Shuike hadn't stepped in to block, the water would have drenched me. Yexi rose from her seat, her voice cool as she addressed Ning Rongrong. Young miss, it really was an accident. I tripped and the teacup slipped from my hand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. A disciple in the 7 treasure glazed tile uniform standing behind Ning Rongrong snorted, staring at Yu Tianheng and then at Yexi and the others. You can fall on perfectly flat ground? He muttered, skeptical. Princess Shuike, helping Duguyan wipe the worst of the water away, added with a sour smile. Yan Yan, when you go after someone, make sure he's reliable. If you're bullied, he won't even stand up for you. Ye shot Princess Shuike an approving look in her mind. Her remark was perfectly placed. Yu Tianheng's arrogance was only being fanned by Princess Shuike's prodding. Yu Tianheng swept his gaze over Ning Rongrong and the disciple behind her. Ning Rongrong, he said coldly, it's obvious whether this was deliberate or not. Step aside. Ning Rongrong's face tightened with a headache. Neither Yu Tianheng nor Ye Shi was easy to deal with. She drew a breath and replied evenly. Yu Tianheng, show me some face. Give some face to the 7-treasure glazed tile school. We will provide a full explanation for this matter later. Chapter 158. I am still the master. Yu Tianheng's eyes darkened, but he said nothing for a moment, instead turning his gaze to Ning Rongrong. Seeing her blocking his way, he realized the situation was thornier than he'd thought. He had stepped forward to defend Duguyan, but they were still inside the 7-treasure glazed tile school. Its face had to be considered no matter what. If he backed down now, how would Duguyan see him afterward? His standing with her would likely fall. Ning Rongrong, don't keep bringing up the 7-treasure glazed tile school, he said at last. I'm not afraid of someone using power to bully others, Ning Rongrong snapped. You owe me an explanation for this. Duguyan stepped forward toward Ning Rongrong, her eyes blazing. She wasn't truly intimidated by the 7-treasure glazed tile school, at most a little wary. Duguyan had her own backing, a titled Douluo grandfather and the Frost Snow Pavilion behind her. And since they were right in this matter, she had even less reason to fear. After the banquet, the 7-treasure glazed tile school will give you a satisfactory explanation, Ning Fengji said. Ning Rongrong's tone was equally sharp. Her temper was already frayed after inviting Ye Shi to the banquet. Whatever had happened only made things worse. She wasn't sure if the incident had been an accident. Before the banquet, Ning Fengji had only asked her to get close to Crown Prince Shi Qinghe. Ning Rongrong had been preparing to reply in kind to Ye Shi, but Ye Shi hadn't said a word, only stared toward the banquet hall entrance with her azure eyes. Xiao Shi, aren't you going to step up and demand an explanation? Shuike asked, leaning toward Ye Shi. It's useless to ask Ning Rongrong for an explanation, Shuike added under her breath. Ning Rongrong can't make the decision. I'm waiting for the person who can, Ye Shi said loudly enough for Ning Rongrong to hear. Ning Rongrong's hands clenched involuntarily. Just then, the banquet hall door opened, and Ning Fengji walked in. Rongrong, what happened? He asked, taking in the scene. How did a perfectly good banquet turn into this? He added, scanning the room before stepping up to Ning Rongrong. There was reproach in his voice, but no blame. After a quick inquiry to get the facts, Ning Fengji gestured to Ning Rongrong to sit down. He would handle it. Tianheng, this has nothing to do with you, does it? Ning Fengji asked with gentle steadiness. Even if our disciple was at fault, Frost Snow Pavilion's pavilion master Ye should handle it. For you to take action against our disciple first, aren't you overstepping? Yu Tianheng wanted to argue, but what Ning Fengji said rang true. Although he'd stepped in for Duguyan, she belonged to Frost Snow Pavilion. It should be Ye Shi's responsibility. Sect Master Ning, that isn't entirely true, Ye Shi interjected, stepping forward. Yu Tianheng and Yan Yan are very close. When you see a friend being bullied, what's wrong with him standing up to help? Yu Tianheng brightened at the support and nodded firmly. Exactly. Ning Fengji raised an eyebrow, a trace of helplessness in his look as he regarded Yu Tianheng. He could have said the young man was being used, that he'd tried to pull him out of trouble, but Yu Tianheng had dawdled to enjoy the view, but he kept that to himself and turned to Ye Shi instead. Pavilion Master Ye, I've heard the facts, Ning Fengji said mildly. This incident was an accident. The disciple smelled of alcohol, which led to unexpected events and this misunderstanding. After the banquet, I will punish him according to our sect rules. Are you satisfied with that? Ye Shi's eyes narrowed slightly as she listened. She muttered, "Old fox," under her breath, but she answered with a smile. Sect Master Ning, you are very generous. I am satisfied with that outcome. After all, I only got a little wet, but I can't decide for Yan Yan or Princess Shuike. I can only speak for myself. Ning Fengji looked at the furious Duguyan and the displeased Princess Shuike and inwardly thought, little fox. Ye Shi was slippery. Dealing with Princess Shuike's side would be easy enough. Shui Qinghe was Ning Fengji's disciple. Duguyan, backed by Frost Snow Pavilion, was trickier if Yeshi decided to make a fuss. Ning Fengji watched Yeshi look at Duguyan and give a tiny, unmistakable wink. A clear signal. Demand an explanation from the 7 treasure glazed tile school. I'll take responsibility for whatever happens. Duguyan's eyes brightened, and she stepped forward, looking straight at Ning Fengji. Seeing Yeshi's small gesture made Ning Fengji's eyebrow twitch. It was brazenly not hidden at all. Yeshi was signaling that even if the person in front changed, she was still in charge. As Yeshi took a few steps back, she passed Yu Tianheng and dropped her voice to him. Ning Fengji, as a spirit saint, could still hear it clearly. Yu Tianheng, she murmured, the opportunity's been handed to you. Whether you can seize it is up to you. Chapter 159. You said the scenery down below is nice. Ning Fengji glanced at Yu Tianheng, trying to read his expression. After Yeshi's remark, Yu Tianheng had paused only briefly before making up his mind. He would back Duguyan. The Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan already had strained relations with the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, so this would not change much. Oh, Yu Tianheng, Ning Fengji thought bitterly, but kept his face composed. Yeshi is clearly using you as a pawn. Don't rush in. Tianheng, there's nothing for you to gain here. Go back to your seat. Ning Fengji said softly, his tone deceptively friendly. Schoolmaster Ning, Yan Yan and I are very close. Yu Tianheng stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. I want an explanation for Yan Yan. Ning Fengji could only stare in exasperation. I'm trying to pull you out of a pit, and you're telling me the view down there is so nice you want to stay a while longer? What will you, Yu Tianheng, or your Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan, gain even if you do get an explanation? Ning Fengji asked, then turned his attention to Duguyan to see how she would respond. Behind Yu Tianheng, Yeshi, idly sipping juice, gave him a private thumbs up with a satisfied little smile. This was exactly what she wanted. There was already friction between the two schools. Pressing for an explanation now could only help their side. Duguyan noticed both men's eyes on her. Schoolmaster Ning, I disagree with what you just said. She spoke with conviction. Once the banquet is over, we'll all leave the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. If there's to be punishment, we'll know then. And as for calling him drunk, he spoke clearly. There was no sign of intoxication. Her gaze swept from Ning Fengji to the disciple standing behind him. That sounded like you being overly protective, Schoolmaster Ning. Yu Tianheng added, we're only asking for a basic apology and compensation. I don't mean to be defensive, Ning Fengji answered bluntly. A mistake should be corrected with an apology and compensation. That's only fair. Not just for young Miss Yan Yan, but for the princess and pavilion master Ye as well. We won't shortchange anyone, but it will have to wait until after the banquet. As he spoke, Ning Fengji mentally calculated what any compensation might cost. An apology was easy. Money and reparations were trickier. Give too little and the school would seem petty. Give too much and it would be taken advantage of. At the same time, both Shui Qinghe, sitting quietly to the side, and Ye Shi, smiling serenely and still nursing her drink, felt their interest sharpen. They exchanged a quick look that said, without words, opportunity. Ye Shi stepped closer to Duguyan and gave a soft cough. Yan Yan, since Schoolmaster Ning has agreed, then he'll give a satisfactory answer and corresponding compensation after the banquet. Let's wait until it's over. Her smile was fox-like, pleased with the theft she'd set in motion. Duguyan's anger softened. Shui Ke, come back here. Shui Qinghe waved, and Shui Ke promptly returned to his side. Ning Fengji acknowledged Shui Qinghe with a small nod, then turned to the disciple at his back. You, come with me. The disciple bowed. Yes, Sectmaster, and followed Ning Fengji out of the hall. The exit momentarily broke the tension, and the hum of conversation resumed as the banquet continued. But the table at the front had gone quiet. The atmosphere had cooled. Yu Tianheng returned to his seat, and just as he sat down, Yu Tianxin leaned in, concerned. Tianheng, wasn't that a bit reckless? It's fine. Yu Tianheng waved him off. The Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan already has issues with the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. There's nothing to lose. Besides, Yan Yan and the others are right this time. Yu Tianxin relaxed and slumped back with his hands behind his head. Yu Tianheng's eyes swept the hall. Ning Rongrong in the main seat, face clouded with displeasure. Shui Qinghe turning a teacup between his fingers, lost in thought, Ye Shi tapping the armrest in a steady rhythm. The guests farther back chatted or sampled the dishes. Finally, Yu Tianheng found Du Guyan and gave her a reassuring smile. She returned it, then resumed talking with Ye Lingling, bright one moment and reserved the next. Outside, on the bluestone path, Ning Fengji kept his voice low and even. Go back to your room and rest for now. After the banquet, I will call for you. Yes, Sectmaster. The disciple bowed and left. When the boy was gone, Ning Fengji let out a long breath but said nothing further. He turned and walked back toward the main buildings, his steps steady but thoughtful. Chapter 160. Prepare to rip off. When the door opened, Ling Yuan, who had been resting with her eyes closed, snapped it open and looked up. Ning Fengji stepped into the room wearing a gentle smile. Outwardly, there was nothing wrong. Everyone, sorry to have kept you waiting, he said as he took his seat at the head of the table. Schoolmaster Ning, you're too polite. It hasn't been that long. It's hardly keeping us waiting. Exactly. Schoolmaster Ning taking time from his busy schedule to host this banquet and invite us. What an honor. The guests murmured their compliments. Ning Fengji nodded and exchanged a few polite words before settling into the main seat, his expression measured. Ye Shi was deliberate by nature. She never acted without a purpose, and this incident had given her leverage. Ning Fengji knew she wouldn't let the matter drop without trying to extract something from the 7 treasure glazed tile school. Legally and morally, Ye Shi's side had the upper hand. As he thought this through, his gaze swept the room and finally landed on Ling Yuan, who watched him intently but said nothing. She was silently calculating how long the banquet would last. Chen Xin and Gu Rong, seated at Ning's flanks, sipped their wine with composure, their eyes flicking to Ling Yuan now and then. They didn't know why she held Ning's gaze so tightly, but it never hurt to be cautious. Time crept by. Just before 11 o'clock, the banquet broke up exactly on schedule. The guests rose and, with Ning Fengji's escort, filed toward the stone gate of the 7 treasure glazed tile school. They paused at the gate, chatting with him and waiting for their juniors to reappear. Eventually, the younger disciples and scions left the school and rejoined their elders. Ling Yuan stood at the gate, scanning the crowd. When she didn't see Ye Shi, Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, or the others, a chill flashed through her eyes. She was about to ask Ning Fengji where they were when he stepped forward. Your Excellency Ling Yuan, please don't be anxious, he said. Master Ye and the others haven't come out yet. There are some matters to settle. Please, come with me. All right. Ling Yuan's reply was curt and neither warm nor cold. Ning Fengji led her back into the banquet hall. Inside, Ye Shi and the rest sat calmly in their places, waiting. Young miss, Ling Yuan said softly as she stood behind Ye Shi. Ling Yuan, it's good you're here. Ye Shi turned with a faint smile. The moment Ling Yuan appeared, her mood visibly eased. Ghost Leopard might be guarding her, but Ling Yuan's presence offered a different kind of assurance. Seeing Ye Shi safe relaxed Ling Yuan as well. She noticed water stains on Du Guyan and Shui Kei's clothing, but didn't ask about them. Ye Shi's safety was all that mattered. Ning Fengji reclaimed the main seat. Ning Rongrong, who had been sitting there, stood to one side immediately. Chen Xin and Gu Rong resumed their positions at Ning's sides. Ye Shi broke the silence. Schoolmaster Ning, a short while ago you said you'd give us a satisfactory answer. I wonder what that answer is. Naturally, we will give you that answer, Ning Fengji replied calmly. Please wait a moment. He then nodded to Ning Rongrong. Rongrong, go fetch the disciple who made the mistake. Ning Rongrong bowed and left the hall. The room fell quiet. Ling Yuan, standing behind Ye Shi, glanced among Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, and the others, attempting to piece together what had occurred. Du Guyan immediately began filling her in, with Ye Lingling chiming in on occasion. As the story unfolded, a look of cold displeasure hardened on Ling Yuan's face. She remembered asking Ning Fengji earlier whether anything had happened in the hall, only to be told it was an internal matter of the school. He had told her that while Chen Xin and Gu Rong kept her from leaving, clearly he'd been deceiving her. Ning Fengji met her hostile stare with a small, apologetic smile. He had been ready for questions. This was an incident he could smooth over with a few words. Ling Yuan opened her mouth, but Ye Shi raised a hand gently, It was enough to silence her. Ling Yuan didn't ask, but her stare remained sharp. Shui Qing'e, sitting opposite Ye Shi, toyed with his teacup and watched impassively, as if whatever was about to happen had no bearing on him. He thought privately that Ning Fengji wouldn't be easy to squeeze anything from. Let's see how Xiao Shi plans to press him. I'll watch for now, he mused, expression unreadable. After about 10 minutes, Ning Rongrong returned, leading the disciple who had caused the trouble. Everyone's attention swung toward Ning Fengji as the young offender approached the main seat. Ye Shi, Shui Qing'e, Du Guyan, and the others all watched closely, waiting to see how the schoolmaster would respond and what Ye Shi intended to demand in return.